Why is this network of CCTV cameras kicking up controversy in Uganda? We'll explain. Should the world look to Africa for the next big thing in technology? And we'll take a closer look at the impact of America's opioid crisis on a mother in the Sunshine State. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu. You're in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Rampant crime is a major problem across Uganda. Now, in an effort to tackle the issue, the East African nation is installing thousands of closed-circuit television cameras in public areas. Authorities say the cameras are necessary to maintain public safety, but critics say they could be used to violate citizens' privacy. Halima Thumani reports from Kampala.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni says installing thousands of closed-circuit cameras in the country will help deter violent criminals and terrorists.
You hide in the borders, you hide in the population because the population is a big number. And also you take advantage of lack of alertness. We are not alert, we are busy doing our own things. We are not concentrating. Then they come, they cover their face, shoot somebody, drive off.
Uganda's police will monitor the cameras, which have license plate and facial recognition software and are mounted in public areas. Ugandan authorities dismiss privacy concerns.
We are looking at schools, we are looking at hospitals, swimming pools. All that is within our database for coverage. So we are not going into people's homes.
Museveni ordered funding for the CCTV cameras after a wave of high-profile murders, including the 2017 killing of a top police official, Andrew Felix Kawesi. Human rights lawyer Galisonga Julius believes Ugandans need to forfeit some privacy for security.
Under certain circumstances, under the Constitution, your privacy can be infringed upon. For example, if there is a court order to that effect. Now, in this case, considering that the cameras are on the street, maybe you could say they are capturing what happens every day on the streets as opposed to what happens in your bedroom.
But critics say government is embarking on unlawful surveillance of its citizens. Dorothy Mukasa, team leader at Unwanted Witness, an organization that advances freedom of expression on the internet and right to privacy, is worried about what authorities will do with the information they collect.
Government says they're really trying to secure citizens, but in the long run, they're making us very, very insecure because we do not know who has control of our data. How do they use it? Where do they dispose it, if at all there is a process of disposal which we don't even know as citizens?
On the streets, there are mixed reactions. Some Ugandans think the cameras are long overdue. But Cesar Mukasa says he feels unsafe.
Actually, we really think they are being used by criminals. Guys are monitoring us everywhere we go, so they know it's around 5 p.m. He's getting out of his house. At 5 p.m. he's coming back, so they know our movements. This is very unsafe for Ugandans.
Time will tell if Mukasa's concerns are well-founded. The cameras began going up in July, and police say more than 350 have been installed so far. Halima Athmani for VOA News, Kampala.
Twin suicide bomb attacks on 2 Somali restaurants in southern city of Baidoa Saturday has killed at least 20 people and wounded another 40. The general manager of the Baidoa City Hospital told reporters on Sunday they had received 20 bodies and treated 40 others. Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Shabaab terrorists who want to topple Somalia's Western-backed central government and impose their own rule based on a strict interpretation of Islamic Sharia law has claimed responsibility for the attacks. The attacks follow a U.S. airstrike against Al-Shabaab militants in Haradere, a district in Galmudug region. Hundreds of Somalis gathered Sunday to mark the one-year anniversary of a truck bombing that killed over 600 people in Mogadishu. Since the attack, a memorial was built so that no one would forget about one of Eastern Africa's worst terrorist attacks. A firing squad executed Hassan Aden Isaac, one of several men arrested for coordinating the attack, which was the largest in Somalia's modern-day history. The attendees at the rally wore red and white ribbons calling for peace and an end to years of bloodshed. Although no one claimed responsibility for the attack, the government has accused Al-Shabaab of targeting civilians. Security remains tight in Mogadishu, and government forces have increased surveillance at some of the city's major entry points to thwart potential terror attacks. An American woman, Katie Myler, who created a charity in Liberia to protect girls from sexual exploitation, is stepping down as chief executive officer following a report that one of its top officials raped and abused some of the girls. Macintosh Johnson, who co-founded the charity with Myler, is being charged with raping girls as young as 11 years old. His trial ended with a hung jury. Johnson died in early 2016 before a retrial could be held. A lengthy investigative report on the case that was jointly produced by Time magazine and ProPublica says Johnson died of AIDS. The charity says one of the 10 girls who testified against him has tested positive for HIV. The report says $600,000 of the charity's $8 million in funding came from the U.S. Agency for International Development, which said today it is looking into the report. French prosecutor is recommending dropping charges against 8 senior Rwandan officials, including the defense minister, who were being investigated over the death of President Juvenal Habyarimana in 1994. The probe opened in France in 1998 following demands by relatives of the French crew who died when Habyarimana's plane was downed, and has led to major tensions between France and Rwanda over the past 20 years. It's now up to the investigative magistrates to decide whether to stop the investigation or move forward and take it to a tribunal. Habyarimana's killing triggered a genocide in which ethnic Hutu extremists killed more than 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus. The next big advance in technology could well come from Africa. At least that is the hope of several new technologies and innovation incubators on the continent. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Johannesburg on Toybox, an interdisciplinary hub founded by 2 female engineers.
Patwa Senene is an unlikely inventor. He grew up poor in a Johannesburg township and could not afford higher education. But the 33-year-old's fresh creations, like his data-collecting 3D printed solar street lamp, have caught the attention of South African cities and companies. Getting there, he says, was a struggle.
I didn't know that, for example, you can be an inventor all day, but you still need to eat, you need to run a business. So as an inventor, you have to go through that process where you learn about business. And all of that for me is self-taught.
A new South African invention and technology hub called Toybox is hoping to fill that void. Its co-founder, coder Arlene Mulder, says Africa is often overlooked as a source for ideas and invention. She wants to change that by supporting local inventors and artists like Senene and giving them room to grow and create.
We've been seeing over the last couple of years incredibly talented inventors coming up with incredible inventions, but they are struggling to bring these ideas to life. So we are creating this ecosystem and platform for them to come together and provide access to the global world.
Toybox co-founder Kanina Foss says the world stands to benefit from Africa's rich artistic talent and traditions.
Some of the cool stuff our fellows are doing include leveraging the intersections between technologies and the creative disciplines so that we can use artists to really push the barriers on what tech can do.
Senene, the inventor, says his inspiration comes from some unexpected places. He recently created a data-collecting broom that allows city workers in crime-filled streets to instantly report problems.
What inspires me is my environment. So many of my devices has been inspired by the places that I've lived in, especially the problems.
Innovators like Senene hope to find that sweet spot between harsh reality, artistic expression, and cool technology. And where else, they say, but here, in Africa. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
Madagascar's election race officially opened Monday with 3 recent presidents launching their campaigns ahead of the November 7th vote. Their campaigns follow months of political tensions. The Indian Ocean island suffers from dire poverty and relies on foreign aid. Protests over proposed political reforms rocked the island between April and June in the main square of the capital, Antananarivo. Among 36 candidates, the leading candidates are Rajaonari Mampianina, who came to power in 2014, Mark Ravalomanana, the elected leader from 2002 to 2009, and Andre Rajoelina, who led the 2009 coup and held office until 2014. Madagascar, a former French colony with a population of 25 million, has endured decades of political crisis and grinding poverty. The United Nations Children's Fund reports that the majority of children living in Ebola-affected areas of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have returned to school and are being taught ways on how to avoid becoming infected with the deadly disease. UNICEF says 80% are attending schools in Beni and Mabalako health zones, the epicenters of the current Ebola outbreak, which was declared August 1st in North Kivu and Ituri provinces. The latest World Health Organization report finds 207 cases of Ebola, including 130 deaths. UNICEF has equipped 365 schools located in the high-risk epicenters of the outbreak with hygiene and health equipment. More than 3,500 teachers and principals have received training on preventive measures for Ebola, and more than 69,000 school children are being taught these Ebola prevention messages, according to UNICEF. It's one of the easiest ways to stop the spread of the disease, of any disease rather. The U.S. Center for Disease Control says spending just 20 seconds washing hands with soap and warm water can reduce illness in more than 1 million kids who die each year from preventable sickness. Two young women from New Delhi who studied design in New York say they have the solution, turning a chore into playtime. They are launching a new hygiene product Monday's Global Hand Washing Day called Sopen. VOA's Arash Arabasadi reports.
Once playtime is over, it is one of the easiest things we can do to keep ourselves and others healthy. But most of us are doing it wrong.
It's such a simple habit to do, and the fact that people aren't doing it and it's resulting in actually in deaths was just shocking. So we decided on coming up with a fun solution.
Two entrepreneurs from India created a new hygiene product.
Sopen is a soap that kids can draw with. It's a fun way to teach kids how to wash their hands.
Young people make a mess with Sopen and then have to scrub to get it off.
Kids actually wash their hands for the proper amount of time because they're drawing on their hands, and underwater they have to rub really hard to remove the drawing. So actually washing their hands instead of just going underwater and, 1 second wash and off.
In an effort to get their product on the market, the two women applied for a spot at a business incubator in Georgetown called Halcyon, located on the aptly named Prospect Street.
Being an entrepreneur is really, really hard. There's a kind of an up and down roller coaster ride. One day things are going great, the next day things are terrible. And if you're doing that alone, it can be really, really challenging.
Halcyon places social entrepreneurs with business professionals who help them refine a marketing strategy.
Without an incubator like Halcyon, I don't think we would be able to make or envision social impact as greatly as we are able to right now.
Sopen is being launched with support from Halcyon. UNICEF reports that 1.5 million kids die each year as a result of diarrhea, and that proper hand washing could reduce that number by 40%. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, living America's opioid nightmare.
Could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
Early this year, VOA journalists Chris Simpkins and Jeff Swicord embarked on a year-long special project to document the U.S. opioid crisis as experienced by Americans struggling with the epidemic in their own lives and careers. The result is a series, The Damage Done, Living the America's Opioid Nightmare. The series follows 3 storylines, each with a main character, a recovering addict in Miami who's trying to keep her family together and stay sober, a volunteer street counselor working in Philadelphia's worst drug neighborhood, and a small-town North Carolina police chief who's quit arresting people and started a non-profit to provide addiction services. In this episode, we take you to Miami, where we meet Allison, who is just out of rehab and trying to stay clean.
I started smoking pot when I was about 18. I was 19 when I met my husband. He kind of introduced me to oxycodone. I got in 2 car accidents back to back, and I went to a doctor. You have doctors that are called pain doctors. They go from prescribing nothing to prescribing a very powerful opioid. It turns into this beast you can't control. A lot of people turn to heroin because it is significantly cheaper. When you find something you like in that drug culture, you kind of stick with it. I'll tell you one. We're involved in family court, and my daughter is with my mom. She has been taken out of my husband and my custody for the time being. We're building slowly towards her coming and living with us.
My focus is being the best father, the best provider, the best person I can be. And there's nothing that I wouldn't do for her.
Instead of sending my daughter to foster care or a foster home, my mom offered to take temporary custody of her so I could focus on myself and so John could focus on himself. She has been with my mom since I entered rehab, so it's going on almost 11 months that I haven't been around her.
My husband, Mike, was an alcoholic. He died while drinking and driving when Allison was in high school. Open the gate. Obviously, the example that he set with his addiction wasn't all the greatest for a child. I just feel that Sawyer's here for a reason, and I don't think it's to be the reward because her mom and dad finally have their act together in their addiction. I'm very proud of both of them. They're great people, but I don't think either one of them have the capacity to be able to really take care of her.
How are you guys doing?
Really great.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Everything's going well?
Very well.
Tell me. Well, this is a very demanding program, and they have a lot to do in a very short period of time. Not because the court said so, but because the Adoption and Safe Families Act require us to reunify families within a year to 18 months. Grandma, how do you feel about reunification?
I think that, they've been doing an incredible job just focusing on them. I think the transition of reunification should be as smooth and not hasty, like John said, just looking for a place in Miami.
We're not asking parents to be perfect. We're not asking them to live the way that you might live or I might live, but we are asking them to live sober lifestyles, free of violence, and to be able to nurture and care for their children. That's what we're looking for.
Because she deserves the best version of us.
Right. So this is what we want to hear from our parents, right? They go to their services.
I think Judge Cohen is amazing, and she understands that this is a disease, but I think it's wrong that Sawyer is used as the carrot to keep them clean.
you know, and then we'll do sort of a slower reunification. Like we'll do weekends, and then if that works out, we'll do, you know, during the week, we'll give them a chance to get their feet wet.
On the next episode of The Damage Done, Leaving the America's Opioid Nightmare, we'll meet a North Carolina police chief in a community overwhelmed by addiction. He decides arresting people isn't enough to solve the problem. You won't want to miss it, so be sure to join Africa 54 on Tuesday. The leaders of Turkey and Saudi Arabia have discussed forming a joint group to look into the disappearance of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who went missing on October 2nd at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Meanwhile, the Saudi stock plunged 7% Monday before recovering to a 5% loss for the day after U.S. President Donald Trump told an American news network there would be severe punishment if it is determined, as Turkey alleges, that Saudi agents killed Khashoggi. We'll get more now from VOA's Michael Bowman in Washington.
Tough talk from the president in a 60 Minutes interview on CBS.
We're going to get to the bottom of it, and there will be severe punishment.
And equally tough talk from lawmakers scoffing at Saudi Arabia's denial of responsibility for Jamal Khashoggi's disappearance.
Severe action needs to be taken, and I think the Congress will take it upon themselves to take that action.
Congressional support for U.S. backing of Saudi Arabia's air campaign over Yemen had been shaky even before the current furor.
It is a humanitarian disaster. So probably the most significant thing we should do is to end our involvement in the Saudi-led war in Yemen.
A major U.S. arms sale to Saudi Arabia could hang in the balance.
Right now, I cannot see that there are the votes to support that arms sale in Congress. Now, remember, it takes a motion of disapproval from Congress to stop an arms sale. Congress has never, in the history of the arms sale law, disapproved of an arms sale. This might be the first.
But President Trump is warning of economic consequences if the United States halts the sale to its biggest customer for weaponry.
Think of that, $110 billion. All they're going to do is give it to other countries, and I think that would be very foolish for our country.
What might the White House consider instead?
I don't want to get ahead of the president on this. Believe what the president says when he says we will take very tough action if the allegations of Saudi interference prove to be the case.
Saudi Arabia denies responsibility for the disappearance and presumed death of Khashoggi, a critic of the kingdom's powerful crown prince. State-owned television recently delivered a defiant message.
تؤكد المملكة رفضها التام.
The kingdom affirms its total rejection of any threats and attempts to undermine it, whether through economic sanctions, political pressure, or repeating false accusations.
Last week, a bipartisan group of senators invoked a U.S. human rights law to force an investigation of Khashoggi's disappearance and U.S. sanctions if Saudi Arabia is found culpable. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. You're looking at a construction worker likely to have builders everywhere throwing down their trowels in disgust. HRP-5P is a robot prototype built at Japan's National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology. In a video released by the Institute, HRP-5P picks up a plasterboard sheet and attaches it to a wall with an electric screwdriver. Its makers say such humanoids may be necessary to carry out heavy manual labor and keep Japan's construction industry moving as the country's birth rate declines. Next up, people should eat far less meat, cut their food waste in half, and improve farming practices to limit the effects of global food production on climate change, according to newly published research. Scientists from various institutions, including the University of Oxford and the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, analyzed the global food system's impact on the environment and concluded that greenhouse gas emissions could be reduced by more than half if people changed their diets to plant-based diets. Two Californian companies, Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, are aiming to make this possible with their plant-based food products that could replace meat. Both companies are driven by environmental concerns raised by global meat production. And finally, Kensington Palace has confirmed that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are expecting their first child due next spring. The news comes nearly 5 months after their wedding on May 19th. It will be the first child for the 37-year-old former actress and the Prince, 34. Markle is about 12 weeks into her pregnancy, and that's what's trending today. Now, motorbikes locally known in East Africa as boda bodas are popular with riders for being fast and inexpensive. In Uganda, boda boda owners have created an app called Safe Boda, raising safety levels to attract more riders.
Among the thousands of motorcycle taxis roaring around Kampala, Safe Boda riders like to think they're ahead of the pack, which is why the Ugandan ride-hailing service is taking its reputation for safety and convenience to 20 other African cities, which regular boda bodas may also abound, but where passengers usually weigh dodging gridlocked streets against their own personal safety. Safe Boda co-founder Ricky Rapper-Thompson.
I was a boda boda driver before and witnessed more than my share of accidents. The worst being a loss of a very, very good friend in a boda boda related accident. So when he died, I realized there was something that needed to be done. I bought a second helmet for myself and always carried one every time I would carry my passengers. So that made me realize I needed to do something as well.
The Safe Boda app and service first launched in Kampala in 2015, but this summer spread to the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, ahead of further planned expansion into other rapidly growing African cities, also blighted by poor infrastructure and patchy transportation systems. Its trained riders wear bright orange vests and all carry spare helmets. That's inspired at least 3 other competitors, imitating Safe Boda's use of standardized fares and smartphone technology to match riders with customers.
That process of ordinary boda, you are using a lot of fuel and a lot of energy. Because you are keeping on roaring, rotating to get the customers. But in this system of Safe Boda, even if you are at home, if your home is near where the app is, you can get the customer.
That's also reassuring for passengers.
For Safe Boda, you get the person from your phone, you know the person who is taking you, the names, the element numbers, and which is nice for you. I mean, it's easy for you to know who you're traveling with than the other guy.
Riders pay about $120 to sign up to the app service. And while Safe Boda takes 15%, it estimates its riders make 30% more than regular motorbike taxis.
That was Reuters reporter Mia Womersley. Good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Today's episode won't cost you anything.
Freebie.
Let's see what this one is about.
Anna, I love my job.
Oh yeah? Why is that?
I get so many freebies from the bands I write about. CDs, t-shirts, water bottles, even tickets to see them perform.
Wow. The only freebie I ever got from my